Hey, so this is me just kind of expanding on what we need to do for the homework assignment this weekend. I have the random player piano patch that you had access to from the first week. I deleted all the comments. This is just the core things that we need for this patch to even work. And what I kind of want to look at is how can we make this into something that's more of a performance tool? How can we get other sounds than just that piano sound? How could we get more user interface kind of things? How can we get some stuff that's not locked into a very specific kind of, what am I trying to say? uh, yeah, not like a rigid kind of format where we just turn it on and off, where we could actually play it a little bit. But just checking, like, I'll turn this on and it works as expected. I can adjust how fast it plays here, controlling this metro. I could limit it to a fewer notes right here, rather than random 47. No, we have 3 notes starting there. I could even bring the duration down so it's much more of like a plunk kind of sound. Get faster. But the first thing I want to look at that's going to make this a lot more fun to play with, I hope, is this MIDI out part. MIDI is essentially, it stands for Musical Instrument Design Interface, I believe, or Digital Interface, Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And what MIDI is it's not actually audio. We think of audio like I'm recording my voice right now. It condenses it down into an audio file. MIDI is actually like digital information that tells a software how it should produce sound, which makes it much more malleable. And it does it with these note on, note off. So like if we actually look at what's happening here, it's saying make note. It's feeding this duration. It says note on, play this note, and then it sends another message that says note off when it should stop playing. So if I actually double click, this is a weird thing about some things in Macs, you can kind of double click on it. And right now I'm sending it to my basic synth control right here. I think most Apple computers have some kind of synth control like this. But we can also say from Macs, which would allow us to set it as an input in something like Ableton or whatnot, so we could have a more complex MIDI instrument. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that right here. And I'm going to open GarageBand. This is going to be different for every software you use. Ableton, I think you have to set it a little more explicitly, but GarageBand, most of you with Apples, it probably is just installed on your computer, so I'm using that as an example. I'm just making an empty project. And I'm going to choose software instrument. It says plug in a USB MIDI keyboard. That's great. We don't have a MIDI keyboard. We have to work on that. I'll just have that up for a second. And there's all these different instruments I can choose right here. And I believe that just by saying from Max 1, GarageBand should be listening for that MIDI information. So I can go ahead and choose something like, well, I guess there's so many options here. And you can see I can just kind of choose what I want. I like this one. We'll go with this one. I can expand how many notes it has. But you get the idea. I'm just going to minimize this for the moment, but like I said, you can go around and play around in here. You could even record it if you want to like make some audio files and whatnot. But let's just go ahead and bring that down. So what are things I could play with? right here. One thing I think they could really play with is choosing the range of these notes. Right now I have it set up so that either you play, if I change this down to 3, I get 36 and 37 and 38. But what if I wanted it to be like 62, 63, 64, rather than just having to make the full keyboard expanded like that? I'm going to make an object called K-slider. No, not K-slider, R-slider. And this is a GUI object, so once I hit enter here, it's going to turn into something, something I can interact with. And I'll just add a comment here, R-slider. And it has two outputs here, high value and low value. And if I actually make an integer box, and I lock the patch, I can click on this, and you can see it's almost like grabbing a sample of something or grabbing a section of something. If you've done any work with audio, you can imagine I'm like selecting a portion of the file. The problem is all the numbers are, like what's nice is like 21, 46. If I go the full range, it's 0 to 127. So what I need to do is actually fit that through this. If we remember 47 plus 36, oh man, what is that again? Well, we actually don't even need to know that so much. We do need to know at some point, but we know the minimum should be 36. That's this lowest note right here. And then the highest note will be this. And just because my brain is fried right now, I'll just do plus 36 and give it a message of 47 just to do the math in front of you all so I don't get it wrong, and lock it and hit enter. 83. So we need the low number to be 36 and the high number to be 83. And the way you could do that, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could scale the values here, but because this is a GUI object, you can change how it behaves. And it's a little different than like programmatically changing it. You can change it with the inspector button, and it'll show you what you can change for any of the objects as long as you have it selected. And if I look down, I have it on all right now. I guess you could also do basic, that would be fine. And it says right here the range is 128, that's 0 to 128, and the minimum value is 0. So I can just double click and change that minimum value to 36. And I believe we changed the range to 47. I guess we actually didn't even have to do that math, because if the minimum value is 36, then it'll only have 47 values it can move from there. So let's test this out. And it's almost there. It looks like I have to add 1 to that. So I'll unlock it, select it, and say 48. Now we have something that fits with the range that we were going for. And the way we could set that up is we could say, we actually can keep all this code here. We want to hook this up to here, because we'll always want it to be at least 36, but we can change it so the range actually slides up a little bit. And then I can get rid of this. And then we need to do some math here for what's happening in here. I need to subtract whatever this value is, I believe, and put it in here. Let's think about this. I should have double checked this. This is the problem with doing this on the fly, is I have to actually think about my math here. So with the value coming out of here, locking the patch. I know the minimum would be 53, and if it's 61, I want basically the random value to be somewhere in the range of 53 to 61. And since I'm adding 53 to it, I need the difference between these two values. So that could be actually as simple as saying minus. I'm going to subtract the minimum value from the high value. So let's look at that and see if that looks right. I'll actually set this up here. So that works out because the difference between, let's bring this over here so you can see what I'm talking about. So now, if my minimum value is 68 and my maximum value is 76, there's a range of 8 possible notes that I want to get. And that's going to be what my random is. I want a random number between 1 and 8, and I'm going to add the minimum value to it. So we should be able to see this represented. I can get rid of this, put this here. And because I'm so meticulous about this, I'm going to do my Command Y trick. I'm going to clean up. I'm always cleaning up. Otherwise my patch chords just get so confusing. And now, let's say I want to, and I can almost line it up. Let's do that actually. Let's line these two things up to be the same size. And can you see how the section I'm grabbing is the range on the piano roll? And the cool trick actually with R-Slider is I can hold Command and I can actually kind of keep the same subsample right there and move it along. So let's see what that's, I could actually kind of move my little section across the keyboard here. Idea, but now we have something much more dynamic and actually visually interesting than just changing a number box right here. I can actually kind of choose where in the range of high to low of these sounds I want to grab, and I can do it in real time. So that's the first trick I kind of wanted to show you how you could play with this. And like I said, as you're playing with this, you could go back, find a different MIDI instrument here. Cool. That's probably enough for that in the moment. Continuing on, let's look at some other areas that we could change how things are behaving. One for me is this metro. It's nice, it's consistent, but when I think about actual music, not all music I like, I mean it could be on a grid, But like, what if we could add like a little bit of swing to it or a little bit of variability to it? There's a few ways we could kind of explore that. One is to actually set up that every time a note is triggered, to randomly have a new time for when it would start again. So I could have this metro not only trigger all these bangs, but I could say random, and let's give it a big range, like 400. And because I don't want anything to be like Metro 0 or Metro 10, it's just so fast that like I wouldn't get any nuance to it, I'm going to add 100 to this. So my minimum value is always 100. And I'll leave this hooked up right here so that I could see what number I'm getting now. So if I hit enter, I'm actually going to choose an instrument down in here that's a little, I think there's a lot of like panning effects on this GarageBand instrument. So maybe something that has a little bit more simplicity, which looking at these names, I'm not sure which one that's going to be. Japanese string movement. And I think I need to lower this. If the value, if the length that the song duration is playing the note at is so long, we may not be able to hear it. Like, let's see, really drastic and say 10 milliseconds. So there's still, this instrument still has a lot of reverb and echo on it. Let's actually just like to really show it. Let's go back to our basic synth here. And what we're seeing is that like now the timing of playing these notes is different. There's a little more, not necessarily rhythm, but randomness to it. And we could, we could add another integer box right here so that we wanted the range to be more like, much more drastic, like 1200. So now we have something that maybe has a little more personality, like it doesn't feel like it's just like on a grid or whatnot. Another thing we could do is an object called drunk. And drunk is a really fun object, not only for its name, but it's basically random, but where it has a step value. So similar to this, I could say 400, and it would give me a random value in 400, but I also have to give it a step size. Basically, when I trigger a bang, and it gives me, let's say, 279, the next time I trigger a bang, I'm going to give it the second argument to say how far larger, or how much bigger or how much smaller should that number be from the previous number. So if I did something like, let's say 5, I'll just use a bang here to kind of illustrate this. So we started at 203, now it's 200, 199, and it's going back up a little, now it's kind of stuck where it is. So you can see that step size is the variability of how much it might rise or fall. And if I change this to 50, it's much more drastic. But it's still staying in kind of a range. And this might be interesting, like we could actually replace this, like if I just, I'm going to keep this code because I'm going to show you something in a second too that will be helpful. Like that's one option we have. Now let's bring in the drunk one. And I should do the same thing. I'll add 100 to it. And let's try something like 20. And I'll change maybe the total range it can go. But you can hear how it's kind of like changing its time signature almost, but it's doing it in a much subtler way. It's either getting faster or it's getting slower, and it might get stuck a little. So maybe I can give it an even higher. Or maybe I'll change the step size. Getting slower. And then I can bring it down to 200. It's much subtler now. So, you know, like you may have a different opinion of which one you enjoy more. We don't have to make a choice necessarily. This is where a lot of things like rate and, no, sorry, not rate, gate and switch will help with this, something like this. So I'm going to set it up so I can just choose which of these three things I'm doing. I'll say gate. I believe we'll do 3. Oh, no, sorry, actually we want, yes, that's right. Oop, I haven't shown you that trick. If you hold Option and drag, you can select multiple patch cords. Now what's nice is you can actually click this green thing and transfer all of these over to here. I'm going to move things around a little bit. And remember, gate opens and closes different parts of the patch, specifically in this box. So I'm going to do, some of you might have seen me do this in one of our tutorials, radio group, which is also a GUI object. And I'll write a comment there. And if I select the interface, I can make changes. I'm going to give it 3 items. And what it does is I lock the patch. I can select in a much more interface ready kind of way which gate I want to open. And gate expects a value between 1 and 3. 1 would open this one, 2 would open this one, 3 would open this one. So I still need to add +1, otherwise it would close all of the things from happening. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the second gate and hook it up to a random and put it back in the same place. And I'm going to take our third gate and put it on the drunk and hook it up here. And this is another trick. Now it's getting kind of crazy. If I hold Option and drag and do Command Y, that's an improvement. It's not perfect. I might have to do a little manual cleanup here. And you might, your idea of whether this is helpful or not, I like to do like overlapping patch cords like this, but sometimes it can be hard to tell where things are coming from. But essentially what's happening, if you ever want to check it, I can click on here. Gate 2 will go to random. It'll change the metro here. And what I need to do actually is make sure that these are all still hooked up. I still need something out here to trigger all of these things happening. So this is another crazy trick. Option, and then hold Option, and I can make copies of these patches, or these chords. And do Command Y. And then hold Option, connect here, Command Y. So now we're still getting our bangs happening to everything that drives our musical instrument, but we're also still sending it to our random. We're sending it to our drunk. And I could call this clean, random, drunk. And I could also do the spacing. If you do Command J on a comment, it automatically shrinks it to wherever you have it there. But now if I hit play on this, nothing happens because I haven't sent anything. This gate's still closed. But I could go to clean, or I could go to random, or I could do the drunk. So you see, now I actually have something where I have multiple coding options of how I want something to behave. And what gate is letting me do is route all this information to specific places and use this radio group or even just a number box to control which flow I want things to pass through. So now I'm giving myself more options for how this instrument might work. Wrapping this up, I feel like I'm getting, this has been pretty in-depth, like it's already pretty complex in the patch chords. I feel like there's a lot to explore with GarageBand even. I guess we have the velocity and the duration. And there's a really simple one we could do, I'm gonna make an object called slider. And slider is the exact same thing as our slider, except it just gives one value. And let's say I'm in here, rather than using something like this, I am going to, and we don't even actually have to use random anymore. We could also just have it that, we could have a fixed duration. Maybe I'll change this down to, I don't need to change it to anything, I guess. There's a bang and a value in here. I guess I could just have this be 1,000 for its range. If we go back to one of these, try something really out there. Oh, this is actually fun if you want to go. Some of these are actually supposed to be more like drum kits. So, and the funny thing is, like, a drum kit doesn't really fit on a piano roll. It's not going to just play something at a higher or lower note. Specific MIDI notes are actually going to trigger like a hi-hat or a kick or some kind of air horn sound. So you end up with a lot more dynamic and weird and diverse of an instrument. So let's just try Crate Digger. Yep, and I have to go back here and change this back to... I don't think saturation has an effect on these. But you can kind of explore where you get certain samples. And actually, that's something that's interesting to note, is some of these, like because we're no longer in a specifically a piano land, we're actually getting notes that exceed what would even trigger something here. So it's just sending values, and it's like I don't have a sample or an audio recording stored there, so I have to move it back down into here. Anyway, thanks for letting me jam horribly on that instrument for a while. Maybe think of some other. I know that velocity is it's not as dynamic as pitch. Duration maybe not as dynamic as pitch either. When the notes are triggered and whatnot. But think about some of the other objects we've already used that might like create more of like an interface for how you might use this for performance. Also, don't be afraid to like label things. Like I'm really meticulous when I get into this stuff about being like a random metro range. Maybe I have to like it's good to know what controls it. You can kind of lose track of stuff. But this should be enough for you to play with and achieve the first assignment for this weekend, which is just to make your own song with this instrument. Expand it out a little bit, play with it, ask questions in the Discord and whatnot. But just do a screen recording of yourself with whatever you build off of this. And yeah, I'll also save this patch and upload it so that you have this to kind of look at and reference as well. But hit me up with any questions, and I hope you have fun with the assignment.